Hello everyone, you're watching News Epicentre with me, Marya, Shakil. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget 2021-2022 today. This budget has great significance as it comes amidst the coronavirus pandemic, which has led to massive economic disruption in India and around the world. First, the key highlights. Health spending took the center stage with around 2 lakh crore allotted to it, 35,000 crore on COVID-19 vaccine development and inoculation. Apart from health, the finance minister decided to spend big on infrastructure projects. 1 lakh crores were allocated for the roadways, the highest ever allocation of these funds. Further, the FM gave stimulus to banking sector with 20,000 crores allocated for recapitalization plan for PSU banks and setting up of an asset reconstruction company for stressed banks. Dalal Street endorsed the budget and markets cheer was evident when Sensex rallied beyond 2,000 points today. The finance minister decided to focus on growth and kept populism out of the budget. Despite being a tough year for the Aam Aadmi, there was no income tax relief or increase in standard deduction or rise in the tax slabs. The big question is, has the finance minister done enough to put the economy back on track, and will this budget mark the reboot of Indian economy? First, a chunk of our exclusive interview with Rahul Joshi.
You are expecting tax revenues to grow by 15% to 15.45 lakh crore. For this to happen, the Indian companies will have to grow at the same pace as they were, perhaps much more than they were pre-pandemic. Are you confident of that? Do you think that we have turned around?
I think the Indian industry has also slowly revealed that the corporate tax rate cuts have also helped them.
Oh,
although it happened pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Now, many of them have also offloaded their debts. They are looking at now expansion. Expansion is happening in core sector industries. There are also a lot of pickup in exports. People are seeing it's possible to invest and grow. Yes. So, I guess the private sector's spirit to come and invest and start widening their domain, together with also raising funds. For instance, we are working on the listing, the Morgan Stanley index, on which the ministry has worked now for some time, and I expect some kind of a resolution this summer.
I see.
And if after that companies can go about raising, they automatically will receive, now that they are part of that larger index, they will receive funds, and with that I think there will be greater investable fund available.
Today in your budget speech, I noticed that you made a strong point on MSP. You were very cogent, very articulate about how the government has only increased MSP on farm produce over the last few years. Manifold. And that's a point you made. Why do you think that farmers doubt the intent of this government?
That is surprising to me, actually, because if our MSP performance is undoubtedly steadily going up from 2014 till today, to doubt the intent of the government, and that is where I feel I honestly want them to come on to the table, be at the table and talk it out with Narendra Singh Tomar, the minister, and specifically tell us where your grievances are. The PM himself has said that he is willing to look at any modification that they want and talk about it. I honestly want them to come and specify where does the problem lie. MSP, I am telling you with data. I am telling in the house. I am giving you government information in the house. You have questions on it, please do come and talk. We are willing. And that's where I wish talks continue.
Do you think the protests are mostly stoked by opposition parties, by people from outside rather than real farmers? I mean, is that the feeling?
I honestly don't know who's stoking it, but I honestly also equally know that farmers, at least those who are present there, at least some of whom are farmers, are probably misguided. I want them to talk. I want them to please talk. I want them to talk on particular points of concern, not have a, oh no, this is not right. Tell us what in this is not right. You're willing to concede.
And let me bring in my guests now. Mr. J. Panda is BJP National Vice President, and Shashi Tharoor, Congress MP. Dr. Tharoor, I'm going to begin with you. Stock markets have endorsed the budget. Most experts and analysts seem to suggest that the government has its priorities right. What is it that the opposition is reading in the fine print that they aren't?
Not just in the fine print, in the big numbers also, Marya. The fact is that we have seen a repetition of, unfortunately, a classic pattern over the last 6 years, where the government says one thing and then you look at the details, how it all breaks down, and it doesn't actually imply what they say it does. We've seen this with the Prime Minister's declaration that his fiscal stimulus, which he announced during the pandemic, was actually 20 lakh crores. And when people crunch the numbers, they discovered it was actually only 1.2 lakh crores. Now the finance minister says 27.1. I mean, these numbers seem to make no sense. 137% increase, she says, in the health budget. But then you look at what it is, 35,000 crores of that is just for COVID vaccinations, a one-time investment. 60,000 crores is for the Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. And the actual allocation for health and family welfare is about par with the rate of the increase in inflation. So we're looking at a situation where there is an enormous amount of rhetoric and a very, very disappointing record in actual numbers and actual expenditure and implementation.
Jay Panda,
so
quick
that's
response.
the first big picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
A response to this on the big picture assessment of Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Jay Panda, if you can hear me.
Well, Shashi Tharoor turns of phrase, and I know he has a compulsion to try to criticize this budget no matter what. Now, I truly believe that this is an inflection point. This is a budget that resets the Indian economy. And let me give you just one example to cite why the argument Shashi is making is just plain wrong. Now, remember, this is exactly the same argument that Shashi and his party, the Congress party, and others of their ilk have been complaining about. So let me just take one item, which is the Swachh Bharat mission. Please recall 6 years ago, when it was launched with much fanfare by the Prime Minister, this is exactly the kind of comment they made, being dismissive about Swachh Bharat, and in fact making fun about it, including his party's senior leaders. Now, the reality is, in these past 6 years, the Swachh Bharat mission has been complimented by every expert in the world and has become a showpiece.
Jay Panda, besides Swachh Bharat, I will be going back to Mr. Jay Panda in just a bit.
Just to say that I'm not guilty as charged. I was actually a Swachh Bharat ambassador and participated in the scheme.
Okay.
My only concern, and the concern of many in my party, was that it shouldn't be about photo ops. There should be tangible gains and benefits to people. And that's precisely our concern with the budget as well, Marya. If you look at the very specific things, the government has enhanced liquidity and capital for big businesses. But where's the relief for the middle class? Where's the relief for salaried professionals? The supply side economics of this government has actually not resulted in investment in the productive sectors of our country. Stock market
That's just plain wrong. That's just plain wrong.
Yes. Jay Panda is in Guwahati for some party work, and that is the reason why there is a problem with the connectivity. Go ahead, Mr. Panda.
I'll be happy to
The point I was making.
The sentence. Okay. Go ahead.
The point I was making is that Shashi and his party and their friends have been making these points, for example, about the Swachh Bharat mission, and they were wrong. We have proven that the Swachh Bharat mission, launched by the Prime Minister 6 years ago, has succeeded enormously well. It's being complimented by every expert around the world, and the big sums announced for it have been spent and achieved their objective. So today, when in this budget, massive new funding has been made available for urban Swachh Bharat for the phase 2, now, what Shashi is saying is exactly par for the course. They're being dismissive about it. Now, let me take the example of infrastructure. Now, sitting here in Assam, I can tell you there has been massive construction of roads, highways, and panchayat roads in the last 5 years. And now another 34,000 crores has been announced for road construction in Assam. Similarly, nearly 1 lakh crores for highways construction in West Bengal and Tamil Nadu and Kerala.
Yes.
Now, you can sit in Delhi and make such glib comments that this is
Mr.
not
Panda,
happening,
so
it's
then
not
the
leading
point
to
will be
investment
made
or infrastructure.
that there is politics in this budget because the focus is on poll-bound states.
The reality is that roads and highways and panchayat roads have been built all over India over the last 6 years at a much higher pace than existed in the previous government. And so these places do require, the Northeast has been massively neglected over decades of Congress rule. So if you come and see the massive construction that's taking place in Assam and other places, and the east of India has also similarly been neglected. So, Shashi and his friends can be glib and say that, hey, you're doing this for elections. But the reality is there's decades of catching up that we need to do.
Okay.
If you come to the ground in the Northeast and in Bengal, you'll see what I mean.
Dr. Tharoor, what is it that you would want them to do differently at this stage, given that we have lost a year to the pandemic?
Listen, can I just say one thing? Jay is criticizing me for things I've never said. I've been giving interviews on the budget non-stop since 2 o'clock, and I've never once criticized the infrastructure allocation. I've said that's one good thing in the budget, and it's one good thing. I believe Mr. Gadkari has done a good job, and there is construction happening. My worry is the fact that unemployment in this country is at levels that we've never seen since unemployment has been recorded in this country. That when people are demanding desperately work under the Manrega scheme, this government has actually cut the Manrega allocations by 35%. December and January have been the highest months of job demand under Manrega on record. So high that the government didn't have the money to meet these demands, and only 61% of the job requests have been met under Manrega. This is a time to increase allocations. The government has actually cut allocations. Look, we have had a bad year because of the pandemic, but people have to recover. It's human beings we're talking about, not just numbers. And the human beings need jobs in their hands. They need an income. And when they have an income, they will spend. This kind of supply side economics, that's what I was saying when I was first interrupted, will only go so far unless there is also some money at the demand end. Jay knows this. He's certainly saying what he's saying, but don't attack me for things I haven't said. I have not got any criticism about the infrastructure. I've criticized lack of money for Manrega. I've criticized lack of money for defense. The Standing Committee on Defense of Parliament, before the pandemic, before the Chinese attacked our Jawans in Ladakh, said that this government needs to give at least 35% more allocations just to be prepared for the threats of 2019. Now, in 2020, you've lost 20 lives, you've got acute tensions across the border, and instead of raising more than 35%, the government's budget has only raised it by 7.4%.
Yes,
and that's mainly inflation.
Regarding
so where are we seeing
Manrega,
any actual relief?
Yes, that point.
So,
can this be finally interpreted as the government getting its act together with regards to fiscal deficit, especially in the backdrop of the pandemic?
No.
So, Marya, let me first of all compliment Shashi for acknowledging that on the infrastructure front, the Modi government has done a phenomenal job. Thank you for that candor. Now, about his other criticism about Manrega and other expenses to help the bottom of the pyramid, Shashi is aware that because of the pandemic, there has been a massive rise of expenditure directly through DBT, through Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile accounts into tens of millions of Indians' hands. This includes 22 million migrant workers. This includes 80 million rural women. This includes 800 million Indians of the bottom of the income scale who've been granted extra allocations on food grains and so on and so forth. Now, you asked about the fiscal deficit. This has taken the fiscal deficit to almost double digits, to 9.5%. Let's pause for a moment and recognize that, because this represents a 3 times increase of the deficit. That means this deficit is 300% of what the BJP government had achieved in bringing down the deficit to. You can't go completely crazy and spend without any concern, because what this does is leads to higher inflation. It leads to rupee depreciation. Now, these are issues I think Shashi should understand. So within those constraints, I think Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharamanji did a brilliant job of explaining that we kept having a series of medium-sized measures taken during the whole of last year, rather than one big bang. And this was done to calibrate the response. So to say that the bottom of the pyramid have not been helped is not true. When there was a lockdown in place, when there were movement restrictions, it didn't make sense to fund Manrega, where people couldn't go out and do the work that was necessary.
The question that I asked, let me ask that question
as per the reality.
Again. What would you have done differently, given the constraints of being in a pandemic year?
Are you asking me or Jen?
Yes, to you.
Okay, so my main needs would have been to actually prioritize where the country needs help. And certainly the bottom of the pyramid argument is key, that it is very much by putting money into the hands of the poor that we are going to be able to remedy the fundamental problems of the economy during the pandemic, because the ones who were hit the worst were the poor. Poor lost jobs, MSMEs, and particularly those employing 2, 5, 7 employees closed. Many of them have closed permanently. As I said, agricultural workers were in trouble. Manrega workers didn't get work. So if we can put money into their hands, and the Congress Party, as you know, proposed something we call Nyai, which is a scheme that at least for 6 months would have essentially given a basic income to the poor people of our country, the bottom half of our population, or the bottom third at the very least of our population. We're doing this in Chhattisgarh, where we are in power. We are doing a form of it in part in Rajasthan. The challenges are absolutely universal in this country, and we do need to do that. The other thing that we would not have done, as I said, we would also have certainly given priority to defense. We would have wanted to see genuine support for health. The kind of health needs, not the one-off expenditure on COVID vaccinations, which any government would have to do. And that's an emergency, it has to be done. But rather, healthcare infrastructure. The one thing that has been demonstrated by the pandemic is the inadequacy of our healthcare infrastructure that we should have fixed.
Dr.
And
Shakil,
frankly,
we have really come to the end of this discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. And Jay Panda, thank you so much for joining us from Assam. We are slipping into a short break. Coming up would be Union Minister Smriti Irani, her take on this budget. And let me bring in my next newsmaker now. Joining us live is SBI Chairman, Mr. Dinesh Khara. Thank you so much for your time. How do you see this budget, Mr. Khara? 20,000 crore for bank recapitalization, as Finance Minister emphasized, the need to clean up bank books and privatization of the 2 public sector banks.
I think it's a very, very encouraging budget as far as the Indian economy is concerned. And these kind of steps which have been announced in terms of privatization of some of the public sector banks and also recapitalization allocation, these are very encouraging steps, and I think it will go a long way. More so, the kind of infrastructure focus which has been brought in this budget will probably require more and more support, and to really ensure that all that support comes through, various initiatives have been taken, and one among them is encouraging InvIT and REIT structures, coming out with DFI, and also capitalizing banks, also privatizing banks. So these are the steps in the same direction. So actually I see that it's going to be a very encouraging budget and will really support the growth ambitions of the economy going forward.
You know, talking specifically about the point you made about infrastructure, the Finance Minister, of course, announced mega infrastructure projects with rise in capital expenditure. But on the other hand, there is higher expected government borrowing as well, with fiscal deficit now pegged at 9.1%. How do you see this going forward?
I think as far as the government borrowing piece is concerned, that of course, I would say that maybe the market will cool down. They will also rationalize what is the expectation and how, and if at all this kind of borrowing is spread over a period of time, perhaps it will not have as much of impact on the yields as the way the market has reacted today. I think today was the first day, and they were expecting as if the borrowing will happen as of yesterday. So I think that may not be the situation. It will be spread over a period of time. And since it would be spread over a period of time, maybe it will have a cooling effect also.
Another important aspect was of what the Finance Minister announced, which was essentially an asset reconstruction and management company for stressed assets of banks. Many say that taking over stressed assets of banks is a bad idea if unaccompanied by privatization of banks. What will be your thought?
No, I think we need to look at the ARCs in a very, very different context here, because what is really proposed in the budget is ARC plus AMC structure. And when I talk about ARC plus AMC, actually the AMCs will help in ensuring that it's more like a O&M agency, which will actually ensure that as and when ARC acquires the assets, they also keep on working on those assets, and it should lead to creation of value. So as for the structure, 15% is going to be cash and 85% SRs. So if at all, if for the SRs in the underlying assets, if at all there is a value creation, I'm sure it will be very accretive for the banks also, who will be passing on these assets through this structure.
Will we also see merger of small PSBs in days to come, like we saw the amalgamation of Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank and merger with Bank of Baroda in 2019?
I will not hazard any guess, but the statement which has been made in the budget is that there will be privatization of at least two public sector banks. So I think with the passage of time, we will get to know that what is really intended.
Which two PSBs, according to you, qualify for the sale, and how confident are you that this will be done sooner, given the bad loan situation we have and the opposition that is also coming from bank unions?
It's difficult to hazard a guess in terms of which particular PSBs, but one thing which I can certainly say that apart from the bad loan is one of the negative portion of the balance sheet of the banks, but nevertheless unstated is the distribution network which is there with these banks. So that is something which, if at all there is anybody, any new investor coming in, he will perhaps see value in the distribution network, and perhaps can ascribe right kind of valuation for these banks.
Last question to you, sir. Your overall assessment, did this budget actually meet the expectations because of the times that we are living in, the pandemic?
Yes, I think the kind of focus on the growth and the enablers which have been created for supporting the growth, I'm sure it will go a long way in terms of recovery of the economy from these difficult times.
All right, Mr. Khara, thank you so much for joining us. And let me bring in my newsmaker now. Joining me now is Union Minister for Textiles and Women and Child Development, Smriti Irani. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time. You have said that it's an Atmanirbhar Bharat ka budget. But opposition, and especially Rahul Gandhi, doesn't quite agree with this. He says Modi government is handing over India's assets
Marya,
to his crony capitalist friends.
Atmanirbhar himself.
Okay, let me finish my question, ma'am. And to quote Rahul Gandhi, he
Barely
says,
Atmanirbhar himself. How can he imagine an Atmanirbhar Bharat?
so are you saying that this is completely misfounded,
Sorry,
whatever
go
his
ahead.
assessment is? He's saying, ma'am, forget putting
Of course
cash
it
in the
is.
hands of people. Modi government plans to hand over India's assets
I don't
to
know
his
what
crony
Rahul Gandhi's
capitalist friends.
fascination is. I don't know what Mr. Gandhi's fascination with cash is. I mean, he has one family member who's fascinated with land, another who's fascinated with cash. I can only say this, that as the Honorable President of India in his address to the joint session of Parliament had said that under Modi ji's government, 13 lakh crore amount went as DBT into the bank accounts of citizens of our country. You know, and you've covered this from many cabinet ministers and representatives who've spoken on your show, that it is this government that has in the past 2 years under the Kisan Samman Nidhi transferred over 1 lakh crore rupees into the bank accounts of 10 crore farmers. In the pandemic, it is this government of Mr. Modi's which had transferred 30,000 crore rupees directly into the bank accounts of 22 crore Indian women. It is this government that has ensured that every penny from the treasury goes into the bank accounts of citizens, unlike the UPA era where the middle person used to be some Congress leader or the other. So I can understand why Mr. Gandhi is perplexed, or for that matter agitated. But like I said, I think the people of this country believe in the leadership of Narendra Modi, understand the reform processes that his government is undertaking. That it is not being understood by Mr. Gandhi is not a surprise to anybody.
Ma'am, the finance minister announced that there is a need to rationalize duties on raw material inputs to man-made textiles, and therefore we are now bringing nylon chain on on par with polyester and other man-made fibers. For a layman, could you just explain how this announcement will help?
I think one needs to understand that we have been dominant in the field of cotton, but in the world market today, 70% of apparels and textiles that is produced is based on man-made fiber. And man-made fiber, the budget announcement before this had spoken of removal of anti-dumping duty on PTA, which is one of 70% of our industry runs on that raw material, so that was released. I also feel that the textile ministry and the industry as such has been extremely benefited from positions such as the 6,000 crore package by the Honorable Prime Minister for apparel and for the made-up industry, which means the curtains, the cushions, covers that you see at your homes, or the rugs that you see, these are actually now exported around the world. India has become one of the largest exporters to a market like the US and to European nations. The performance of the textile industry in production of PPE suits has created history not only in the country but across the world. We were the only industry which in a lockdown turned around an industry and actually created a $1 billion plus industry size in only 2 months. The production linked incentive scheme that the Prime Minister announced, which has a 10,000 crore amount only attributed to development of the man-made fiber industry, I think today got a huge boost from the announcements by the Finance Minister, particularly the seven mega textile parks that she has announced in the budget. We know that for years under the UPA regime, the textile industry was ignored, and I'm extremely grateful that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have given us the much needed impetus and support.
You know, you're talking about the textile parks, and of course, it is being seen as a game changer. How will it really play out in your ministry, ma'am, in the sense that how could it be really the game changer for the Indian textile industry?
Textiles is the second largest employment generator in the country after agriculture, and there is a lot of synergy between agriculture and textile because our raw material source is from our agricultural base. As the Finance Minister today had announced that when you looked at the MSP comparative from the UP area up to the Modi government, you saw that, for example, the field of cotton, in 2013-14, only 90 crores was spent by the UPA government in procurement of cotton and the MSP operations, only 90 crores spent. But as compared to the Modi government in Jan 2021, we had disbursement of 25,000 crores to cotton farmers directly into their bank account. The industry knows how to balance the benefits that need to be accrued by the farmer and the support that is needed to the industry. I am hopeful that today in the textile ministry, with the blessings of the Prime Minister, we have a program called Silk Samagra, which is aiming to make India self-sufficient in the silk sector in the forthcoming 2 years, which is not even a condition that anybody thought was possible in the silk segment of our industry. In the production linked incentive, we are looking at 50 lines wherein apart from man-made fiber and apparel, we will see a growth even in technical textiles. And Marya, technical textiles is an area which was not concentratedly looked upon by any government before Mr. Modi's. We had in the year 2017 a mission mode work on this particular segment of our textile economy. Today we impact from building of the space program and Chandrayaan onwards to agriculture. That is a range of impact that the technical textile industry is seen. Since the Prime Minister's intervention, only in this one segment of textile, the technical textile sector, we had a negative trade balance in 2018. Today we are self-sufficient and we've actually eroded that negative trade balance. We are today have become a net exporter of technical textiles. So the sky's the limit as far as the textile industry goes, and we are absolutely proud that we could contribute to the Prime Minister's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and I'm sure that the mega textile parks that the FM has announced today will be an amalgamation of efforts between industry, centre and state governments.
What about the other ministry, ma'am? The other ministry of yours, have your expectations been met?
Absolutely. I think that for too long in the Women and Child Development Ministry, many elements were segregated and working in silos. Today we saw an amalgamation of the nutrition program and ensuring that it is tagged with efforts with regards to health and the Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana that was pronounced has an element not only of nutrition but also critical care hospitals, which will come out now in over 600 districts, which will have a huge impact on the health of women and children in our country. There was a presumption earlier that nutrition is only relevant to the food that a child or a woman eats. We have consistently maintained that be it the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, where toilets were made for women and children across the country and poor families, be it the Jal Jeevan Mission, which gives us clean drinking water in our households, or for that matter, the supplementary nutrition program. They can be divorced from each other. They need to work under one umbrella, and that's exactly what was enunciated by the Finance Minister today.
While some bold and visionary reform measures were announced in the budget, but opposition says it's a manifesto for poll-bound states. Tamil Nadu, Assam, West Bengal. You were in Bengal campaigning just a day ago. What will you say to that?
There was a tax holiday which has been given for affordable housing projects till March 2022 for the entire nation. Last I checked, the nation was not in an election mode. There's a tax holiday given, exemption given for notified affordable rental housing projects so that our migrant workers can benefit from it. Last I checked, the entire country was not in an election mode. Pneumococcal vaccine is now going to be made available to every state in the country, thereby saving 50,000 children from death. Now, last I checked, election or no election, children needed to be supported in this way. There's a deep ocean a whole program that was announced by the Finance Minister. Nobody till now has found any flaw with the desire to generate research with regards to the wealth that our oceans have to offer to our country. The announcement by the Finance Minister with regards to Eklavya Model School, which will benefit tribal population, I don't think that this is an announcement anybody can denounce. Or for that matter, 4 crore scheduled caste students getting scholarships, as has been pronounced by the Finance Minister. So I think those who have been myopic enough to say this is a election-bound state budget have possibly not paid enough attention to the pronouncements by the Finance Minister, which includes an access to agriculture credit worth 16 lakh crores to farmers across the country, which includes Agri-Infra Fund, which will be made available so that APMCs are strengthened in our country, which also includes, apart from Poshan, apart from the mega textile parks, strengthening of e-courts in our country. So I think every facet of our democracy, of our society, or for that matter, our economic systems today has found a solution in the budget presented. Are you hoping then
that this is setting stage for the next round of talks with the farmer unions and that the government has shown its intent and its commitment towards MSP?
Government has consistently maintained 5 points that I'd like to reiterate here. One, that it is the Narendra Modi government which has implemented the Swaminathan Committee report so that MSP operations benefit our farmers across the country. The government has fulfilled that commitment. The Finance Minister today has articulated the comparative results between the UPA and the Modi government with regards to MSP operations and the direct benefit accrued to our farmers. Government, for the first time in the history of our country under Narendra Modi's leadership, brought about the Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana, which has benefited 10 crore farmers who have received over 1 lakh crore into their bank accounts. The government has committed itself to the welfare of over 10 crore small and marginal farmers who needed the protection of the government. Today, the Finance Minister announced how under projects such as ENAM, we have had over 1 lakh crore of digital transactions done by our farming community, and she has expanded that to now include 1,000 more mandis. The government has reiterated time and again that no subsidy, or for that matter, no administrative structural support that was being given to the farm sector and to the farmers has been altered with the passage of the 3 bills. And I think lastly, the Agriculture Minister has stoically maintained that he is available for conversation, for discussion, deliberation on pointed issues with any farmer or farm organization. There has been sustained talk over a period of time, but it must be said that the Agricultural Reforms Bill came into passage in terms of legislation after 2 decades of conversations, of deliberations, of discussions, not only by the BJP, but also by successive government, which included the UP and the Congress party.
All right. Smriti Irani, Union Minister, thank you so much for your time and thanks for sharing your thoughts on the budget. We are slipping into a short break. Coming up would be Union Minister for Petroleum, Dharmendra Pradhan. Welcome back. Speaking exclusively to Network 18's Editor-in-Chief Rahul Joshi, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that there will be no U-turn in fiscal prudence. Listen in.
In many ways, the economic survey was a harbinger of things to come. Your government is finally now going for aggressive growth without so much worrying about what the fiscal hawks would say. For a government which has been fiscally prudent and conservative, do you think this is some kind of a U-turn or a turning point in the way you look at the future?
No, I don't, because it is one thing to be conservative and fiscally prudent, and at normal times. Even now, if you notice, when people kept telling, oh, print money, you spend, you have to spend. And I also made a conscious statement that if I don't spend now, I will only be postponing the growth and I have to spend. That is clearly a conscious statement that I made. So, given the situation that we are in, the stimulus was absolutely necessary. Quality expenditure is what we were looking for, and that is why when we have decided and when we have taken a call, I am sure that because of the way in which we have designed it and also monitoring the qualitative expenditure that we are planning, it will definitely give us that required multiplier for the economy. And once the economy is into that virtuous cycle, income generation, revenue generation, and all of that will fall in place. So, your fiscal prudence is still intact, and that is why I have given you a glide path.
Right.
Because I am confident that this year I might have gone that far, but I can rein that back in.
But 4.5% in 25-26, given that we were hovering between 3 and 3.5 in the last couple of years, before the pandemic.
That's true, but the pandemic and its impact is something which we will have to keep in mind for the duration it is going to take for it to come back to that kind of a buoyancy, for that level of growth. And I can't be overestimating the economy, and I don't think the economy is in a position to even heat or overheat. Those fears are not at all there, and therefore I have to give it a reasonable time, and I didn't grudge that.
And joining me now is Union Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas and Steel, Dharmendra Pradhan. Mr. Pradhan, thank you so much. You have said that it is a comprehensive vision for making Atmanirbhar Bharat a reality. Which major announcement in the budget do you think will help India stand on its feet?
Marya, today, reacting on budget, Honorable Prime Minister has coined again one term. This budget is for life and for livelihood. Jan and Jahan. This budget meant for both. In this budget, there are 6 pillars of this budget, but according to me, there are 2 prime factors. One, the massive spending on health sector in the post-COVID-19 scenario. The health concern is a major issue for all the global citizens, especially in our country. And another major issue is how to carry for the livelihood. For the livelihood, in the last few decades, 5.5 lakhs crore capital expenditure. These are the 2 things, health expenditure and capital expenditure on infrastructure, on road, on railway, on other infrastructure. And within that, more than 1 lakh crore spending on agri-infrastructure. These are the area which will create economic stimulus, which will create a economic circulation that will help for our economy and our livelihood.
I'm going to
These are the 2 major things according to me. Is a blockbuster budget.
The agri cess in just a bit. What is the big message of this post-COVID, or maybe the COVID era budget when it comes to the energy security of India?
I am thankful to Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Finance Minister. They have reposed their faith on energy sector because we believe energy is the catalyst of socio-economic change. We have fulfilled the responsibility by connecting 80 million free LPG connection in name of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana in the rural part of the country, in the poorest of the poor of the country. By reposing faith on that scheme, again, Finance Minister has allocated another 10 million new connection will be given from this budget for the poorest of the poor. Number two, another 100 districts will be connected with pipe gas network, city gas distribution network. Now it is 400. Another 100 will be joined in this scheme. That means the next generation energy infrastructure will be given to the citizens. Number three important issue, for the first time, the natural gas pipeline will go up to Srinagar. This is a major development, this is a major issue, major commitment for our Kashmir, Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh, Leh Ladakh development policy. In all these area, this source energy is going to be wage earner, energy is going to be the contribute to the treasury, and for the first time, the way Finance Minister has restructured its excise duty policy come out of the energy excise collection. Around sizable amount of money will go to agricultural infrastructure fund, which is ambitious program of this government. Energy sector is going to contribute in a big way.
Tell me, sir, how is this agri cess on petrol and diesel impact the Aam Aadmi budget?
No, not at all. Honorable Finance Minister has restructured the excise duty strategy. She has reduced some amount from the basic excise duty and some amount from the additional special excise duty. By reorganizing and restructuring the excise duty strategy, she has created another window for the agri infrastructure cess. That means there will be no burden on the consumers. With the same collection, priority will be given to the agricultural infrastructure spending. The Kisan of this country has first right on any kind of tax spending.
Okay, sir, Prime Minister Modi's articulation for energy sector in India has been that India needs to reduce the import dependency by 10% and increase the share of gas in energy basket. How is this budget laying down the roadmap for that?
As I said, for the first time, the government is going to, this government in the history of energy network, natural gas pipeline network, for the first time, government has spent money on Pradhan Mantri Urja Ganga. Government has spent money in the Indradhanush pipeline for the northeast. In the same way, government is creating infrastructure up to Srinagar by government spending. That apart, I am expecting in the future GST Council, the tax rationalization will be there. In that way, the gas sector will get a flip for its expansion.
Last question to you, since you were in Haldia only yesterday, Prime Minister will be travelling there as well. The focus is on an infra push in Bengal, Tamil Nadu and states which are going for elections. What will you be telling those who are talking about the politics of this budget?
No. The way the country has welcomed the budget, the financial market has given red carpet to this budget. Marya, you are a good friend of us. Please don't undermine the vision of Honorable Prime Minister and the good work of my elder sister, Finance Minister, Madam. Do you think this 35,000 crore allocation for vaccine is meant for pool-bound state? Do you think the 1,10,000 crore railway spending is for pool-bound state? No, not at all. This is for pan-India infrastructure development. This health infrastructure spending will be for the pan-India. Yes, in a democracy, in every year there are elections. Should not we spend money on those election-bound states? This is unfair to put this kind of analysis.
All right. Dharmendra Pradhan, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to speak to you, sir. That's all from me. Thanks so much for watching.